So it's on now.
Well, he died at
She said her
49.
last
She
name
was
was
88.
Cancer.
Right.
I don't have any emails from her.
How's it sound?
Mary.
Yes, 39 years.
We're on standby for a minute.
There was never anyone.
that would start the slideshow, but you have to tell it how you want it to set up the slideshow. Is that the best we can full screen? Yeah. Slideshow monitor, automatic, primary monitor, presenters.
You ready in the back? Okay, we're gonna open the public hearing. It's about 7:06. And this is concerning changes to the income tax credit fire levy. I believe Ryan Samuels is gonna lead us.
Yeah, so thank you, Mayor. Just a little history before we really get into this. This is obviously the fire levy is expiring at the end of 2024. And this is something that we kind of took a comprehensive look. And before we get into that, my name is Ryan Samuels. I am councilman for the city of Harrison. I am the chair of the finance committee. So, this is kind of something we have kept our eye on through this process, going through the budgeting process. So we initially started discussions earlier this year. We had several public work sessions where we did discuss several options, and we're going to go through that through this presentation. But we did start on this a while ago. We did have a couple public work sessions, and really we came to some sort of solution, or what we think is a solution for this, and we'll cover this into the presentation. So, Kim, if you can go to the next slide. So the agenda for the presentation is pretty quick. We'll just do a quick background on the most recent fire levy that was approved. We'll talk about the financial concerns that were facing the city. We'll talk about the options we discussed at the public work sessions, and then we'll talk about the recommended path going forward. All right, in 2019, the most recent fire levy was a replacement levy that was approved by voters. This levy provides approximately $680,000 in revenue to cover the operating costs incurred by the fire department. The final payment of this levy is due to be received in 2025. So it ends in 2024. Our final payment will come in 2025. When looking at this, we kind of looked at the future needs and the challenges the city is facing. Obviously, right now, the city is not immune to the current economic conditions that are existing today. We're seeing rising fuel costs, a ridiculous rate of inflation causing increases in operating expenses, and continued growth of our community, putting stress on our safety services. Infrastructure, obviously a big topic of discussion, at least in council and hopefully throughout the community, is the Dry Fork Overpass project. That is going to put a pretty big financial burden on the city. The city is also not positioned financially to address the deteriorating infrastructure outside of the Dry Fork. You drive down the roads, you can see that some of them are in disrepair. We're just not positioned financially to address those issues, and we're consistently relying on grants and loans to address these issues. Safety services. With police and fire, obviously we're seeing increased operating expenses. I do have a chart up here showing, and some of this information I pulled from the 2019 levy, showing the expenses where the police and the fire, the safety services, if you look at the police, the 2014 number on the left, blue, you're looking at about a $2.5 million budget. The most recent budget that we have before us, the budget is up to 3.9. Fire is at 3.6 million in 2014, and that has grown to 5.1 with this most recent budget. The budget's not final yet, so those aren't final numbers, but that is really just to give you an idea of what the expense is. These are the two biggest departments in the city, but certainly not the only ones that are seeing this kind of growth in their expenses. With police and fire, we are, seeing a competitive labor market. We are finding it harder and harder to fill positions and keep employees within the city. Also, it's the possibility of expanding the facilities, possibly looking at an Edgewood Road Safety Services facility. So those are the kind of things we're looking at for the future of Harrison. All right, so for the options. Obviously, the first option up was to renew or replace the existing levy. That's pretty much just swapping out the existing levy, renewing it, and moving forward, but obviously that would require voter approval. The next option we started looking into, and just to get an idea of the impact, is a reduction in the tax credit that we offer. So if we move forward with the tax credit reduction, this would impact residents working in municipalities with a payroll tax such as Cincinnati, Sharonville, Blue Ash. The revenue impact of the reductions, basically a 25% reduction in the credit equals out to about $309,000. 50% reduction is $618,000. 75% reduction takes it up to about $927,000, and 100% reduction brings it to about $1.2 million in additional revenue. All right, another option that was discussed in the work session is, per the city charter, we do have the ability to increase the tax up to 1.25%. The current rate does sit at 1%. So if we would take that up to 1.25%, it would provide an additional $1.1 million in annual revenue. Increase would be spread across business, residents, and persons working within the city. So it has a broader reach if we do this tax increase. The tax credit reduction with the 2.5% increase. So with a 25% reduction, we're looking at 1.5, 50% reduction, 1.9, and if we would go all the way up to 100%, we'd be looking at an additional 2.7 in additional revenue. So those were the options that we had on the table. Options 2, 3, and 4 that we talked about, obviously eliminate the levy and therefore reduce the property taxes for city residents. Levy expiration will save residents about $160 a year on a $200,000 home. So there would be some savings that comes across if we would eliminate the levy altogether. So moving forward, the proposal that we came up with beginning in 2025, we start to phase out the tax credit. We looked at a 2-year process where it would be a 50% reduction in the first year and a 50% reduction in the second year. Also, we would like to ask voters to approve a renewal of the fire levy. If this levy is passed by voters, it would provide us the additional resources for the replacement of fire equipment and operating expenses. It would allow the general fund to focus attention to other funds/projects such as the Dry Fork Overpass. But this decision for passing this levy would strictly lie with the voters. So, all right. So that's all I have in terms of the presentation. I know I probably read through that pretty quickly. I'm always a fast reader when doing presentations. So at this point, that's all I have for my piece of it.
So, open it to discussion. We'll open it to comments and discussion by council first. If anybody would like to give feedback on the proposal, why they
Good presentation.
good or a bad proposal.
Like the presentation, very clear and concise.
Thank you.
And if any of the people in attendance, if you want to come up here, because we're being recorded, we'll be able to get your comments on tape. And council, if you have questions or just general comments. Yeah. So just, we're not gonna, unless you get ridiculously long or begin repeating yourself, we're gonna give you pretty much an open mic.
Okay, that's fine. So, for those of you who do not know me, my name's Jeff Neal. I've been in the fire service for 28 years. I'm getting ready to retire. I am a subject matter expert in the fire service. I own my own company. I travel across the world teaching for the DoD. The problems that are being faced here in Harrison are not unlike problems being faced every place else. Kodiak, Alaska has the exact same problems. I just left there. They are building a new firehouse. They are having the exact same problems. Anglin Air Force Base, they just built their new Station 1. They are having the exact same problems. I literally just got back into town about 2 hours ago from that. If you're going to try to pass this levy off of that that we just saw, you're not. It's going to be a disastrous failure for all of you guys. I was a part of the levy in 2008. I've been a part of the levy every year. You're not going to find a bigger fire service supporter than I am. All right. Years ago, a lot of residents out here really felt that we were lied to back when the first ladder truck was bought and the fire gear was and the chief and I have had discussions about this, when we thought that we were lied to, when that's what the levy was going to be, was to buy fire gear and buy a new fire truck. That failed, and right behind that failure, you bought all new fire gear and a brand new fire truck. All right, that put a bad taste in the people who grew up here, lived here, and have been a part of this community for years and years. The problem that I see with what you guys have going on here is your funding is grossly underestimated, grossly underestimated. The operating costs for new firehouses are astronomical. The city of Cincinnati, the operating costs are way more than they ever imagined for brand new firehouses. Anglin Air Force Base, their operating costs for their brand new firehouse is 3 and 4 times what they thought it was going to be for a brand new firehouse. All right, you are grossly underestimating. Plus, you guys have to start to look at, are you going to buy, if you do go the route of building a new firehouse out on Edgewood, are you going to buy a new fire truck? Are you going to increase the manning for the fire department? Because that's another really disastrous failure, at least in my opinion, from being a part of the last levy. The minimum manning was supposed to be 10. And I don't put it on the fire chief. It's not the fire chief's responsibility. It's you guys who reallocated the money and shifted money around to other places. It's not him. It's you guys up here, because the buck stops with every single one of you here. And you reallocated the money away from the fire department, and you took the minimum manning from 10 They run almost every single day with 8. They don't have a command officer. They rely on command officers coming from Colerain or other places in the county, which is absolutely unacceptable. If you look at NFPA, you look at the OSHA regulations, you look at everything that's out there, 1910, you look at the CFR 29, you are in violation of it almost every single day. But it's because of you guys reallocated the money and shifted the money from what was supposed to go to the fire department on the last levy. And I've been a part of every single one of them. Like, I strongly support the fire department. You can ask the union, you can ask the fire chief. There's no stronger supporter of the fire department out here than I am. And I will work my butt off to get this one passed if you go the levy route, but not off of this right here. There's no way.
Wow. Be clear, this is just our proposal. This is not a levy committee. There's way more that needs to happen before we get to the point. But this is just our proposal going forward.
But when you met your wife or whoever, the very first thing that you saw is what sticks in your mind. And if this is what the very first thing that the voters see is going to stick in their mind, and if they see a half put together plan or a plan that's not comprehensive enough to cover the operating costs of what you want to do, they're going to know that you're going to come back to them, or you're going to change stuff midstream, or you're flat out lying to them, which has happened in the past. Now, I'm not saying you or anybody in particular up here, but it's happened in the past, going all the way back to 2008, going back to 2006, 5, whatever the ones were before that failed. Like, there were big blunders in what went on, okay? But you also have to look at not only just one firehouse or not just the operating costs. The only reason I know this is because I worked for Harrison for 10 years for the fire department. Station 56 is absolutely outdated. It's falling down. It's decrepit. The bathrooms are horrible. The facilities are not meant for fire department use anymore. They can be redone, reworked, and rebuilt, but the way that it is now, it's not meant for the fire department. Station 56 or Station 57 out on West Road is not even nearly big enough for the crews that they have out there. That station doesn't even need to be there. That's the other thing, is did you guys go into and try to find out where the firehouses need to be? Did you bring in an outside person to look
Yes.
at you did?
Yes.
Okay, so where does it say Station 57 should be? Because
Well, we
not
have
there, it's not there.
Harrison Avenue, but we're talking about over by Harrison Junior School.
So are we gonna
No, don't get
bypass
me
that?
wrong. Hey, listen, we would love to build all brand new firehouses, but we're trying to be fiscally conservative in this approach. You know, as for misappropriation of funds, I kind of take offense to that, because we worked really hard.
That's perfectly fine.
What, I'm sorry?
That's perfectly fine if you do,
No,
but I've been a
and
part
that's-
of them.
That's fine. I haven't seen you in a finance meeting in the 10 years I've sat on council to talk about our finances. And that's fine. I understand you're busy and you're traveling the world, going to your
You
fire
can-
meetings. That's okay. It's my job to sit in a meeting and talk about the finances. We are a fiscally conservative group. We have taken great strides in trying to maintain that fiscal conservancy. But at a certain point, we have to address the problems. And from what you're saying, basically, it sounds like repeal the full tax credit, go ahead and increase it to 1.25, get rid of the fire levy, and collect the $2.7 million.
No, I'm saying there's other ways around it. I'm saying that the disastrous effect that you guys, and I'm not saying you guys, but Mr. Dieter, when he was here, because he was one of them that drafted it, was the JED. The JED is, in my opinion, one of the absolute worst pieces of paper ever written in this county.
We don't disagree with you.
We all agree on that.
Okay, we agree that we need to address stuff.
So let me ask you,
But-
so if you're being financially responsible and conservative, were there other options put forth by Dries on how to get the, either a firehouse built or the land out there for the firehouse on
There were
Edgewood?
conversations around that
We're
exact
we're
topic.
still in
So what
discussions.
happened?
We're still in discussion with Dries. There's about between 3 and 5 acres on that would be the southwest corner of the property.
What was their offer?
They're considering a donation to the city.
Yes. That was the
property.
initial approach.
If they were to get what? Because there's always a
Nothing.
quid
They've-
pro quo. I mean,
They've
it's always
already-
gonna happen.
They're already, their plans approved, the building facades are approved. The only thing they have to go through is the process of getting the individual plats, like section 1, section 2. You went on planning commission, seen that. They come in, we're gonna build 19 homes here, we're gonna build the next 40 homes, getting those approved that they're following their plan. That's the only steps they have left. So they're not getting anything in return for the property. We waited till everything was over and they came and said, this parcel here is problematic for us because they needed a borrow area for dirt. Well, if we put a non-residential structure, a firehouse there, we can build that up out of the floodplain and we don't have to worry about the dirt. Because they've taken that down and barred the dirt out to use in other areas to make their dirt balance work. And so I just, a week and a half ago, had a discussion with them about potentially that coming to the city, some of that property. Some of that property is being used to put a lift station in for the sewer, and the balance of it, they're still trying to figure out if they're gonna donate it to the city or not, if they have a need for that property.
And that's not the optimal location according to Radius, but that
it's
is
not.
taking advantage of
Yeah.
Right.
a situation.
It's about
I get
it's about
that.
a
Yeah.
mile,
Yes.
or so away from the ideal
And those
location.
are all things that we've had conversations about.
But 3 acres
So-
of land out there for free is unheard of.
No, I get that you don't make your time up driving that 1 mile. You make your time up on getting out of the firehouse quicker.
Right.
Everybody in the firehouse,
Yes.
fire service knows that.
And
It's getting dressed out, getting on the fire truck, and getting out of the firehouse is where you make up. It's not driving like a bat out of hell going down the street. It's
So-
getting out of the firehouse.
one other point that I want to kind of bring forward, if you look at the proposal, it doesn't talk about building a firehouse. We noted that because it's something that's on the horizon as a potential. We don't have in this proposal that we're going to support purchasing land, buying a firehouse. It's to, it says, provide additional resources for the replacement of the fire equipment and operating expenses, allow general funds so that we don't have to take that $680,000 out of the general fund and replace the 680 from the levy. So that 680 continue to go where it's going and on the projects. So this is a replacement levy. It's not being increased, or not being proposed to be increased, to do what we're currently doing, not to do more, not to build
So-
another house. So if we were to go look at building a house out on Edgewood, most likely there would be a bond issue, which would restrict 100% of their funds to one specific thing, building a house. It can't be used for anything but that. That's
Okay,
what
so
the-
percentage-wise, what percentage out of the year to date, what percentage did the fire department run with 8 or 10 personnel? And at what percentage did they not have a command officer
I
riding in a command vehicle?
I don't have those numbers, but I know that we attempt to schedule 10, and we don't mandate in unless we're gonna go below 8. I would say that 8 and 9 is the most common number we run at, but it's
Right, but when
it's not due to lack of funding, it's due to personnel.
When we did the last levy, and I was a part of the last levy meetings, that was sold to the voters as a minimum of 10 per day. That's the way it was sold to the voters.
So we increase the staff, and when we've got, what do we have, 27 full-time? But we brought in.
That's
6
not the way it
additional-
was sold to the voters.
So in 15, we brought in 6 additional firefighters in December. I remember that.
Yeah.
And that brought the staffing up with the intention of trying to be able to put more people on each shift. So we went from whatever we were at and added 6 full-time firefighters, so we didn't have to rely as much on part-time.
Okay, so you're making my point. What you're making my point on is are you looking ahead? If you do, just say you do build a firehouse, or Dries, or whoever builds a firehouse for you, are you looking ahead at the financial burden that it's gonna put out of this levy
So-
to increase the personnel to,
We've not got to the point where we've made a decision that that's a reality or a potential that's something where we're gonna go through the exercise of finding out what the cost to staff that house with equipment and personnel and et cetera, trucks, whatever we might need. When we have a more positive that's looking more and more likely, we'll begin going through those exercises, because right now, the cost of the goods and services, construction and personnel are so volatile. The numbers, if we got them next week, would be outdated by next year.
Yeah, the
So-
firehouse alone has doubled in cost. You
I
know,
get that.
based
So,
on,
we
based
underst-
on salary increases alone, you know, we have estimates on what we're gonna need. We have equipment that we can move from current firehouses out to a small 2-bay station, something like that. I'm not saying it's gonna be.
so you're gonna
a
have no
2-bay
reserve.
station. I'm sorry?
You're gonna have no reserve.
Well, the hope would be that we would have reserve, yes.
Well,
But,
so we gotta look at the numbers when we get there, Jeff.
yeah.
If right now,
The
a
cost-
new medic unit's $400,000.
That's,
Yeah,
So,
the only thing I'm saying is that this is really premature to be putting out there until you guys look into more.
well, it's not part of our proposal of what we wanna do with this levy, but we wanna be very open to the public that there's a potential in the next 1 to 5 years that there could be an opportunity, and it's not gonna show up overnight, to build this 3rd house.
All I'm saying is you have one shot with how everybody's property taxes just skyrocketed. Mine just went up $130,000.
Your valuation.
100
You have my
valuation.
evaluation. You
What
have
did you-
one shot.
What did your taxes go up?
I just told you $130,000.
Valuation was
valuation you're paying.
$130,000. What
I
did
don't
your
think you're
taxes
paying
go up?
$100,000
I'm
to the
a
auditor.
fully disabled vet, so like I get a tax decrease,
Right, but-
but like, I get what you're saying, but still, like, you have one shot to get it done, because if you don't, it's just gonna keep weighing on people, and they're gonna, the more you bring levies back, the more they're gonna get more and more ticked off, and they're not gonna vote for them. So you have one shot to get this right.
no, and that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to fix
That's
the
why we're-
long-term picture
Yeah.
of the funding stream, so we don't have the levy in place.
The idea
You know,
with the,
that alleviates the tax burden on the real estate taxes.
the
that you're
reduction of the
feeling.
tax credit is so that we don't need to rely on levies in the future.
As you know, in any fire department, a tax levy is a Band-Aid on a situation.
No, I get that.
It's a
And-
5-year Band-Aid.
We want to remove the Band-Aid and fix the long-term income stream of the city as it continues to grow.
But what I wanna make sure is that you are, the funds that you're gonna be able to pull in on, that you don't go that route, and then in 5 years, and then you put a levy on top of that.
Well,
No,
That's
I
my,
understand.
that's my concern, because, do you understand what I'm coming from?
Absolutely, absolutely, and we've talked about that
Because they do that on
extensively.
school levies, the school system is absolutely screwed up because they do that stuff
I
all the
know.
time. We're gonna put an earnings tax, and then all of a sudden, 2 years later,
It
we're gonna
burns
put like,
burns
and
the
it's just
bridge.
on and on and on. So that's what I don't wanna see happen, because what you're gonna do is you're gonna turn the residents against the firefighters, which is total BS.
well, that's
Yeah.
absolutely not a goal of ours, but
It's never a goal.
to be
Correct.
completely open about it, the goals are, there's 3 things you have to understand. We wanna pass the levy, reduce the credit, and then the levy will go away because we'll have enough revenue coming after we get the full credit gone. And then if we get to a point, we might have to have a bond issue to build the firehouse.
Yeah, we're
But
still
that would
never
be,
gonna have the
it'd be a
income
bond
stream we
issue,
need.
not a levy. And there's a big difference between a bond issue and a levy. A $500,000, $680,000 levy that money comes in and it goes into the fire budget, and we can use it for anything in the fire budget. A bond issue, when you say you're gonna build a building with
Has to
that,
go directly for that. I get it.
it's strictly restricted funds. So if we take some of that money, we can take money from anywhere and put it into that building, but the money that comes in the levy can't go anyplace but that building. So if the building comes in at, say it's a $6 million levy, and it comes in at 5.2 million, that 0.2 or 0.8 that's left has to go back. So the tax structure gets adjusted at the end. Because the levy, the bond issue is to pay off bonds that you take. If you don't use the full bonds, then at the end of the structure of that bond levy, it reduces.
All I hope is that when you do roll this out, is that it is well thought out, well written,
We're trying to
that
get
it's
as far ahead of
totally
this.
transparent on what you guys are doing, and there's no money shifting going back and forth. If you say your minimum is gonna be 12 or 13 staffing, your minimum is gonna be 12 or 13, and a year later, it's not 9. If you, that's what I'm really concerned about, because of past history that's gone on.
Well, I'm gonna be clear on that, because I think that's what really kinda got me, money shifting. All the levy money goes directly to the fire department's budget and is spent in the fire department. That needs to be very clear.
And then,
Very clear that all the fire levy money goes directly into the fire budget and.
Are you willing
is
to
spent
give
that
those,
way.
all that up?
I'm sorry?
Are you willing to give, share all those?
our budget's public record,
Yeah.
so.
I invite people to the
The-
finance committee
the other-
meeting all the time.
other-
So then I'll put in my FOIA request tonight, and
That's fine. So
You put in
the,
what? I'm sorry.
my FOIA request.
so the request would be go to the fire chief, it would get reviewed by a law director, and then the records will be forwarded to you. That's how simple our public records requests are. You make it to the department, it goes to the
No, I know.
department head, they get it reviewed, and then the records are dispersed after.
I know, I've worked here. I get it.
It's October of '23. We have until August of '24 to decide on the fire levy. So we're getting out ahead of this so we can get the input from the public to make sure that we understand and that the public understands, and we can come to a point where we think we have something that's acceptable and functional. There's no reason to put a ballot on the levy that's gonna fail. And there's no reason to put a ballot or a levy on the ballot that isn't sufficient to do what we need. So if we're gonna come up short, or we're gonna get a big, huge windfall, those levies shouldn't be on the ballot. And if it's a levy that can't pass, we shouldn't be putting the money on the ballot, or the levy on the ballot, because it costs us money to get it there. So we're, 10 months ahead, trying to get the information out to the public, get that feedback, so we can make the best decision.
That's
And I'm
perfectly
glad
fine. I
that
just
we-
don't want, months down the road, if I show up, I don't want it to get thrown back in my face of, I've never seen you at a meeting, because I'm here, the
Well,
very first
so
one.
I've seen you.
I'm glad that we're getting feedback. We've had a couple of work sessions.
Not the first
and
meeting.
I only see
What, the,
one or two familiar
Gale
faces
back.
from the public out there
Cam.
that came to the work sessions. So, I'm glad we're getting more feedback, because if this room was packed, it'd be great. Because I wouldn't mind staying here a couple hours to hear the input, because the more we learn, the better we can develop this.
And we can clear up pictures, misconceptions. You know,
there's none on my, I've been a part of
No,
them.
the fire levy money all goes to the fire department,
Well,
and it needs to be stated that way.
I think that there probably are people that have misconceptions in the
Yes.
public, and this is a good venue to get those cleared up in. So, I'm not saying that you have misconception or anybody in the room, but this is being recorded and will be broadcast. And the questions or points that are brought up and the answers that are provided might be brand new information to somebody watching, and they might not have realized what that was. So, these
Yeah, I'm
discussions
just
are very
going back to
beneficial.
trying to figure out how years ago you guys said that you needed a new fire truck and new fire gear.
Well, I can
and
tell you
then-
half of that answer.
Then all of a sudden, after that levy failed, all of a sudden, new fire gear and a new fire truck showed up months later.
So I can't tell you about the fire truck, but I can tell you that we did receive a significant grant to purchase the gear. And you don't know if you're gonna get a grant or not. So we had written a grant.
Yeah,
Oh, that's
you know the
before me.
conversation I had with you.
That's- yeah,
I'm
that's
thinking about a different grant when we just got a grant.
I know, I mean, I have a memory like an elephant, so.
Well, I'm thinking like 2014 when we got the grant for the gear.
Is there any conversation about the new firehouse? And I know you guys keep like trying to deflect on this
It's
firehouse.
been very minimal. I mean,
Over the tie-in fees for the sewer department or the sewer system itself.
so the sewer and water are enterprise departments within the city. So funds that come in for them support those departments, and then a small fraction is allowed to come out to support other departments, not more than 30% by the state guidelines. So we do take money out of water and sewer and put it through the general fund and then into other departments that support water and sewer, finance, tax, police, fire, like that.
Mayor, I think what he's referring to is there's a story that I've heard that the city told Dries Homes told the city, we'll build a firehouse or we'll give you the land if you don't charge us tap-in fees. And the city said no.
That is absolutely not the case. Dries wanted to put in a low-pressure sewer system to serve their 400 or so units, which would have served their 400 homes and only their homes. No home along Edgewood Road, no homes on either side of Edgewood Road along that line would be able to get into that system. And I absolutely refused to allow a low-pressure system to go in. I said, we need a gravity line so that either side of Edgewood Road have access to it. And there's a lift station that needs to be built so that it's a larger lift station than a low pressure would require, because you have to size it in case the other side of Edgewood were to come in. And if Dries were to participate in the construction of that line, then they go pay standard tap fees. If they don't pay and contribute to the construction of that line, our ordinances say their tap fees are doubled. So we brokered a deal with them that the cost that they were going to invest, which is $750,000 into the construction of their low pressure system, they would turn over when we started construction of our gravity system, so we didn't have to borrow $750,000 to build it, and that took their tap fees down to standard rate. If they had paid double rate, they would have paid about $1.4 million in addition over the 6 to 10 years it would have cost or taken to develop the development. So, a couple $1,000s per house over 10 years. We got $750,000 day one. So the value of time and money, we didn't have to borrow that money and pay interest on it over 10 years that we would have the bond to pay off the sewers. So financially, it was a good deal for us to have them give us the money up front on day one.
Are you gonna mandate when you run or they run the sewer line out Edgewood, are you guys mandating that people tie into that?
We are not. So we are gonna run the line, we will put the tapping tees in place so that when a homeowner voluntarily wants to hook up or is mandated by the state to hook up, EPA, it will be there, and that will make that tie-in easier. But they will still, if they're not in the city, they will pay the out-of-city rate for the sewer. So if additional property out there were to annex into the city, the line is sized such that that additional property can come in. We don't have to put a larger line in.
So there's a lot of discussion, and I don't live out there, and the next move I make is not in Ohio. But I grew up out on Dick Road. Are you, your expansion that keeps going, how does the tax base work as far as coming into the city, as far as property taxes, when you annex places into the city and the parks of Whitewater? How did all that tax base go, and how does that go as far as some of it going to Crosby Township still, some of it coming to Harrison?
So, the city is one of very few jurisdictions where you're part of the township, even after you annex into the city. So the township portion of the property tax becomes significantly smaller, and then the city gets a large portion of the property tax. So the township still gets a very small portion. Some houses, it's a couple bucks. Some houses, it might be 50, or a very expensive house,
Mine's
maybe up to
286 a
100.
year in the Parks of Whitewater.
But, well, that's what comes to the
Crosby
city.
Township.
That's going to Crosby.
That's what goes to Crosby.
And how much comes to the city?
I don't know the number.
It's more than that.
Yeah, it's
But-
significantly more.
So the township property tax base drops when they annex in, and the city was getting a zero. We start collecting property tax. But it doesn't matter if you're in Harrison Township or Crosby Township, your property goes from being taxed solely by the township for property taxes to being split between the city and the township.
So since this is being aired, explain the JED disaster on taxes.
So, in the JED, I can't explain why it occurred this way, but I can tell you how it works. If a property develops in the JED, the property taxes go to the township. There's an income tax placed on the people that work at that business, because it's strictly for businesses. There's no residential in the JED. And the income tax is split 50-50, but we get 1/2 of 1% as an administrative fee. So it's 49.5 and 50.5%.
So off of
Division of
Duke's,
income tax. And that was passed before anybody up here was on council.
do you know what you get out of Duke's building down there?
I don't have that number off the top of my head. Duke and Fresh Sausage are probably the two largest contributors out of the JED to the city's income tax base.
Mr. Dieters did just say last night he planned on doing a PowerPoint explaining the workings of the JED in the short future.
What he needs to do is take it and throw it in the garbage is what he needs to do.
Well,
Hey, you live in the township
no, he lives in the city.
And the township.
and the township.
Yeah.
You're more than welcome to run for township trustee, and then we can talk.
Yeah, so the JED was,
I have no,
believe it was
like, I've been
2000.
outspoken on that since,
it was around 2000
We're gonna, I
when the
think, a
JED
lot
was
like
adopted.
that.
And
You have 7 people up here
it's
that will
not.
get rid of the JED, but you got 3 township trustees.
there aren't a lot of people up here today that are thrilled at all about the JED agreement. Is that what the year it was? So, yeah, so the JED agreement came in 2003, and it's 20 years old now. And
on track to be 99.
the structure of it at that time was acceptable enough that council passed it. Council passed it, and I would, if I was a trustee, I would have passed it in a heartbeat, because when you read that, it's very favorable to the township.
For the city, it sucks.
I will say at the time,
Period.
it might have been designed perfectly, but it has outdated itself.
The 99-year contract's a little
At the
long.
time, people were not very happy about it.
It's, the
As long as they have.
Well,
don't know
99-year
about that.
contracts usually are not the ideal, they are 99 years. And-
All right, that's cool. Well, I made my voice clear.
Yeah, thank you very much for your
It just needs to be,
Can I ask you a question? What would you recommend we do as for income?
for income for this,
Yeah.
one, you have to look at your expenses going forward. You have to look at your projections. Your projections are, there's no way around not building a new, I know you guys don't want to go down that road.
I understand all that, but what-
But there's no way to go around it. So you need to put together a comprehensive plan of, you not only need to build a new firehouse, you need to level 50, I know you want to be fiscally responsible, but sooner or later, those costs are going to creep up on the taxpayers. It doesn't matter if it's today
wait a minute.
or if it's down the road. If you start
Mr.
planning
Neal?
today,
I understand what you're saying there, because you said it already, but my question to you is, what would you recommend we do as far as the taxes are concerned?
I can't give you that answer until you are able to project out all the costs over the next several years or 10 or 15 years. Right now, I say it's perfectly fine the way that it is. But if you're going to start adding in employees, which you absolutely need to do because your number of runs are going to continue to increase. If you're going to build a new firehouse, you're going to renovate a firehouse, build another third firehouse, like all those costs.
I understand.
You need to have a comprehensive
Wait a
plan,
minute.
and there's no comprehensive plan for the
So-
fire department.
Mr. Neal, you're intelligent enough, because I know what you do for a living, but you're intelligent enough to figure those figures out yourself. And what they are, tell me how we're gonna raise that money to do that. How do you feel we should do that?
And honestly, just to throw some information at you, just because you're asking those questions. You know, the mayor was about right. A firehouse right now is probably gonna be $6 million on the conservative side. Each firefighter that you add is about $110,000.
At least.
At least.
Yeah.
You know, I'm trying to be conservative here. You know, $110,000. And if you need a full shift, that's 4 firefighters.
Oh, that's one,
Well-
that's one crew.
That's one crew, I'm sorry, for the department. So you're talking 12 guys for 3 different shifts.
I've
know,
done it for
that's
28 years.
just the fire department.
I've done it for 28 years.
I mean, that's just the fire department. Then we talk about the police department. As the police department, as the city continues to grow, and we look at the police department, then we look at the street crew and how the street crew has to manage things, and then the water department. And we're talking the entire city.
You're making my
not
point though.
just the fire.
This is going off the fire department, but now you're throwing the police department, you're throwing all these other
I
departments
know.
in. That's what I'm saying is if you're gonna sell it for the fire department and you're gonna go down the road to the fire department because everybody loves us, people don't like the cops. Maybe out here they love them. Where I come from, they hate them.
Yep.
I'm just saying,
And that's why the presentation is what it is. You know, the immediate funding from the fire levy is something that's been in place for 2 cycles now. And then we look to alleviate that real estate tax burden from the residents, but it's gonna change on the income tax side.
So
Because it faces the long term.
but I've already gone down,
financial
my concern with you is, and you get it, is do away with the levy aspect of it, okay?
Yes.
I'm down with that. But I'm just saying, don't do away with it if you're gonna need it in 3 or 4
Oh,
years.
no.
Because of escalating costs, because of new firehouses, because of added personnel, new fire trucks, all this stuff. That's all I'm saying is, if you project it to be that way, leave it there and put a new one, like, then start to roll this back and do it a 2-tiered system and not just do away with it and then try to bring it back later on. That's my
It
concern.
makes us nervous.
That's why there's a transition.
'Cause we don't have a
Jeff.
crystal
The suggestion is renew the levy one more time, and then go through the removal of the credit, and then not renew the levy. And the levies are fickle things. Fire levies typically pass, typically. There's some places that have problems with them. Most places they pass.
Because people like us.
Well, I'm just saying, but we don't want to put all our eggs in that basket every single time that if the levy doesn't pass, we got a problem. So we're trying to find a way to wean ourselves away from the levy, and that's a change in tax structure. And what's currently proposed,
I support that.
we're trying to make the transition. And if we get to a point, we can't go higher than 1.25% without going to the voters. And we can't go below 0% on a credit, so we're looking at different options on the table. And how do you maximize that so that we don't have to be hand-to-mouth or deficient in our funding? I very much anticipate that if we go to build a third house, there'll be a bond issue to build the house, because a $6 million outlay, you borrow that money up front. The city's not positioned to do that without a bond levy.
Right, I'm just saying that then you have to look at putting the firehouses in the correct spot, because once a fire company reaches 3,000 runs, that's considered to be unhealthy on firefighters. So then you either have to add another fire company, add another firehouse, and/or add personnel to take away that burden on them. So like, as you continue to grow, you have to look outward and see where the correct spots are for those firehouses, because the firehouse that I work in every single day, we make 17,000 runs a year. Our firehouse makes 17,000 runs a year. They put it in the wrong spot. We
So-
get absolutely annihilated.
One of the other things that we've looked at, it's not a consideration right now, is we contract services outside of the city and the township in Indiana, or east side of Indiana, is whether the value is to continue to contract that area or focus on our area. So we've had those discussions to see what makes sense. And if it comes down to we can't support what we are obligated to support, the city and the township, because the money's not there, if we'll find the least valuable contract and focus our services over here. That's what I would anticipate would happen.
I'll just put this on the record, though, that if you were to ever contemplate on bringing a third party into the city like WestJet or one of them again, you would see my head explode
That's
right
not
here.
that's not a consideration.
I know, I get what he's saying. I'm saying the other way. Right, I'm saying if you do it the other way, though, like, because,
So right now, we contract with a handful
right.
of agencies.
No, I get it. I get what you're saying. And we get money from them because we cover their area.
And it's financially beneficial to us.
Right.
But it's one of those where I can help my neighbor out all I want, and maybe he pays me more than it costs me to help him. But if I'm not taking care of my own house, I'm gonna stop helping him and take care of my own house first. So the city residents and the township residents that we serve with our firehouses are our primary service people. The people that are in Indiana, that's a luxury that we provide to them. We don't have to do it, it's contractual. We do it because financially it makes sense for us. And right now, we have the ability to do it. We're not at that 3,000 number out of either of the houses. We don't run I don't think we make 6,000 runs a year, do we? Yeah, so we're not there yet.
But then you have to
But if
look
we were to-
at time out of service.
If we were to approach that
There's
level,
a lot of other.
if we were to approach that level, I know there's some local houses that don't have enough staffing. They gotta call in equipment out of service today because they can't staff it. But we don't typically have that problem. If we do, it's a very rare problem. It's probably due to an injury or an illness or something that was unexpected, because we schedule out far enough in advance, you know how it works, that we typically have, and I know that you say the number's 8. I think that we try to get to 10, but we don't always get there. We're probably at 8, 9 most of the time. And at those numbers, we can respond to 99% of our calls. Our calls for mutual aid are very, very low when we need mutual aid.
Oh, no, I get it. I mean, I get all the I get the dispatch. So is there a way that you guys, because I feel like I've been up here way too long.
We didn't put a limit on it, so.
There's no limit.
Is there a way that you can go and do and you may have it, a 5-year, a 10-year, and a 15-year plan on just the fire department, on what the needs are now, 5 years, 10 years, and what not only the personnel, the equipment needs, the firehouse needs, the operating costs, and what you project that out to be 5, 10, and 15 years down the road, so we don't come back to this, we need a levy on the tail end of this because the operating costs are 3, 4, 5 times what we thought they were gonna be?
I think we looked out 10 years.
Yeah, and part of the only hangup that we have right now is COVID effects, inflating a lot of those numbers. You know, the past 3 years with employees shuffling and driving up, and I don't mean this negative from anybody.
I get
Driving
it.
up payrolls,
I get it. I know.
which then correlates all the way down through all the benefits.
Right.
You know, health insurance has increased at a 10% click, which is absolutely ridiculous. But, you know, COVID has really made it hard to really stick to, because it was a 3 to 5% increase, somewhere around there. But we really have seen an uptick in the past 3 years that have driven those numbers through the roof. And that's why you see a big jump, especially in the past couple of years. But if we stick to a 3 to 5 year clip, it's pretty easily estimated. And that's part of the reason for the discussion. We originally started talking about this 3, 4, 5 years ago.
About 3.5.
Yeah, three and a half years ago. And it's finally getting to the point where we're rolling it out, because of the, projected expenses going forward.
We started talking about whether or not we would be renewing the fire levy about 2 years into the levy. And that was before the property that Dries is talking about, that now is approved developing, was even under an option by a developer. So we had a developer come look at it, and they went away, and the second developer, Fisher, looked at it, and they went away. And Dries hadn't showed up, and we were already talking about this. Now we've got potentially Carolina Trace developing also on top of this, so the dynamics are ever changing. We're trying to get ahead of it and get good numbers, so that if the income stream to the city, if we do a levy, and levies are flat, $680,000 for 5 years. But if we bring in income tax, new house, additional income tax. 2 new houses, even more income tax. 400 houses, more income tax. So that's beneficial.
Please limit the amount of apartment buildings out here. Because all that's gonna do is put additional services on these guys over here that,
So Dries has almost exclusively single-family residents. There's a couple what they call paired villas, where it's 2 homes with a single wall in the middle. And then they have, I think they actually have eliminated the 6 multi-unit buildings where they're like 4 and 6 unit buildings. I think they've eliminated those. The last proposal by Gradison on Carolina Trace had 11 multi-unit buildings, 4-unit buildings, townhouses. And then it had the rest of the homes, so 44 out of 240 roughly were multifamily. The other 200 roughly are single family. So the focus on development in this area is not multifamily housing. People are not, the majority of the market out here is not for multifamily. It's for the paired villas and single family.
all right. So, I just wanna say that I am not against this at all. I've already told the fire chief, I will do everything for you guys. I will help you guys out in any way, but I just want it done right and all the information out there, so. Like,
We do. I do wanna say something.
Go ahead.
As we all do.
Yeah, I mean, listen to you. I don't disagree with what you're saying, other than misappropriation of funds. We have not misappropriated funds, but I've only been on council, since 2020. So whatever happened with the levy, that was before me. But we have been working to get to this point, where, we are confident in the numbers we're getting. We feel like, we're moving in the right direction. We know we have to do this, and I know right now, we can't do the studies. We just don't have the money. That's what kind of transitioning away from the levy, reducing the tax credit, we're getting to that point where we can start looking at these, and these things are options. So I don't disagree with what you're saying. I think we're just at the beginning stages of trying to get to the point where we can do it.
I get your first impressions, but we need to be as transparent and open and say, this is everything that's out there, and this is our A plan right now, but it's not in stone. We haven't inked a document that's in our hand ready to go to the Board of Elections to put this on the ballot. we're trying to get as much feedback so that we can make a very intelligent decision. And the best way to make a bad decision is not to get information. So,
If you ever need information, call me. You have my phone number.
thank you for doing it.
Thanks for coming out.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you. No, I won't come after that. You did a good job.
No, come on.
So, now you know how much time we'll give you.
Yes, you're right. Okay, I will try to make this a lot shorter because I'm getting to my bedtime. Mine too.
I haven't eaten dinner
Thank you.
yet, so.
First positive thing I want to say is we've
Give
been.
us your name, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Mary E. Kaiser. There's actually two of us with the same birthday in the same community. So I am Mary Kaiser on Thomas Lane, and yes, someone is my neighbor. And police chief will tell you, I have not been calling. He's been very good.
Whoa.
As a result, I am a retired resident, meaning I was the very first tax commissioner for the city of Harrison. It was my job. I was hired by the opposite party. It was my job to run the surveys, to find out how much money was going to come in, even after they passed the law to have the tax and had no information. I gathered the surveys. I did the best job I could. I started out part-time, and then they decided I need to go full-time very quickly. That's $6 an hour, by the way.
So you were overpaid, huh?
I definitely was.
Back in the day.
And any story you heard that at a grocery store I mentioned to a council member, you make more money than me, go ahead and buy my groceries. I did not say that. Here's my concern. People do not understand finances, and I'm not going to go to your meeting because we elected you to do that job.
You are
If
correct.
you're asking us to be there, you're going to have trouble.
Nope, just asking you to be informed when you make the conversations.
I have talked to Mayor Nyer several times through texts and phone calls, and I'm going to miss him deeply. I would call him on Mayor Nyer when there was a problem, and I would call him Bill as a friend. In reading this and also listening to the gentleman before me, I can see two things that happened after I left the city because I couldn't even go grocery shopping at midnight without somebody trying to give me their taxes, and I'm not bonded. And because my family needed peace. I could not administrate in the town you live in. I went to the city of Forest Park. Now, don't blame me for what it is now, but the city, the Forest Fair Mall at the time, now known as Cincinnati Mills, which is now defunct, was my project, my very first business project. They were not collecting money, and they couldn't figure out why. I put my boots on, took an officer, and on Friday, payroll day, I was there. They didn't get their check. Either they gave me the money of the percentage they needed on their payroll, and I wrote a receipt, or their boss did. I had no wash way of doing things. It was the law. Bottom line. There was a time when Forest Park was also in trouble. Couldn't figure out how they were going to get their money because they were running out of funds. It was easy. My team, I say my team because it was my program, my team, who they said we could not afford full-time workers to audit. You don't need full-time. You need people who know what they're doing. We had an evening crew to audit. We had a daytime person to handle the problems. And we had other people collecting the money. We had the business auditor, myself, who came in at 11 and stayed till 9 o'clock at night. The working people needed to get to us, not 9 to 5, 8 to 5 job hours. As a result, through Lois Reynolds, the deputy tax commissioner, and myself, we brought in a couple $1 million of unpaid people, and that was through auditing. I still say when I left the city, there was a problem of me doing it myself with the amount of people we had in the city, which has now grown unbelievably. I say, number one is Rita is your problem. Rita, when I was with the municipality, SWOTA, Southwest Ohio Tax Administrators, that's where you need to get your information. Every city that went with Rita, within 3 years, paid almost nothing in percentage to Rita because they weren't collecting. I, as a business person, have a tax business, and new people said, what are you talking about a city tax? I'd send it on, send it to the city, the whole bit, because some people didn't even know. Unfortunately, I suggested the welcome package of, hello, we're Harrison, here's our city ordinances, and if you need help, here's our liaison, resident liaison, person who will answer your questions. Well, guess what? You don't have one anymore. We had it for about, well, till the year I left. I left, truthfully, because of politics. Because I was hired by a Republican when I was a Democrat. I changed to be a Republican because I didn't like what was happening. And the Democrat mayor did not like that. I held my ground. I called the Attorney General's office because that mayor wanted to get into the files to see what people were making. And I said no. I'm not going to go into it. We had out a settlement and a gag order, which I don't have anymore. I'll tell you one-on-one. But I'm going to tell you this. You get rid of Rita. You get a good team. And if you're going to skimp on your tax people, you're not going to get any money. Because I know for a fact there's one person who has not paid in many a years. And I promised my husband I would not send myself or him to jail. And I'm telling you, if you get a strong administrator, let that person do their job, you get a backup administrator, and you get 3 part-time evening people. I'll show you how to do it. I'm sorry, honey. I'll tell you how to do it. You will bring in more money than you can imagine. Because I also know for a fact that a lot of your industrial people think they don't live here, therefore they don't have to pay. You know how I know? Somebody brought me a W-3, which if you don't know, is the talliation of payroll and where the taxes monies go to. And not one dime to Harrison. Why? They're in our community. Why? Why aren't they paying? Because we don't have any workers that live in your city. It's not the law. Mr. Mayor and I, Bill, my friend at the time, why'd you change my laws? I created ordinances, I created rules of regulations. A couple of you changed, gave a little loophole. They don't have to deal with it now. It's your own fault. Did you ask somebody who knew about taxes? That's my complaint. I apologize if I'm shouting. And by the way, your zoning ordinance map that you passed has Ray in industrial, M1 property. We're the ones who are in industrial, not Ray. He's residential. And you passed a map that's wrong. And when we went down to get a permit, well, guess what? We didn't have to do the extra fencing because Mr. Agra is industrial. Had he been residential, we wouldn't. I apologize. I should not have gone there, but I'm furious because 2 people, which I've already talked to, I emailed, I called, and Mr. Nyer, Mayor Nyer, his true title, knows I did. And to go to a meeting, I can't. My health won't allow it because I'm too passionate about this city and what's happening to it. And the fact you're losing money makes me mad, because I worked darn hard to get this city the money they needed. And then because of dumb politics, they hired people who weren't even tax people and just had them collect the money. So I'm sorry, city. I know you all didn't do it, but it's your own darn fault,
May I ask a question?
maybe. You're not gonna get me in trouble.
No. Actually, the resident liaison, what was their responsibility and what did they do?
When a person came into the city, they move into the city. A lot of them, they don't know what's rules, what do we do? And 90% of them, you'll see them on Harrison Happenings. My child's going to school, I don't know what they need, blah, blah, blah. The resident liaison had a phone number, and you would call them. I have a problem about this. This is who you call. I have a problem about this. They couldn't gripe, complain, nothing. It's just they needed to know what to do. The liaison also had a pamphlet for important numbers you need to know. Non-emergency fire department versus 911, which we know now kind of changes. Not everybody likes to go online. We still have a lot of us that Facebook's not a good friend to a lot of people. It was very important to me because the old welcome wagon had kind of ceased, and they brought some positive things from the community. Might have been, and again, we were smaller. I mean, it's been 40 years, you know.
Well, I know we've had some discussions about, especially just because of the the number of new houses being built. And I know we have talked about it in the past, but trying to make sure that they do have all this information.
Meet at
I
their
just wanted to see
clubhouse.
if it fell in line with that, so.
It was very helpful in the first couple years, especially at the tax, which, by the way, the tax got passed. And I was still in, of course, before the whatever. But at the last of the year, on December 29th, council passed to absolve the income tax. Sounded good, right? The new people came in, they reinstated it because they said, how are we supposed to work without the funds? The residents, if you go back to the old newspaper, were told if an income tax was started, there would be no more levies. And that was on, I remember the big across the thing, because I'm like, oh, we did not say that. But somebody said. And so I guess my comment is, as the gentleman was saying, you go and you reduce these taxes so that everybody's paying their share. They're not. We have contracts with Indiana, Township, they're not going to be paying. So now it's only on the Harrison residents who are working. You pass that, I don't even have to pay anymore.
Yes.
There's other ways. There's just
Well,
other ways.
in regards to the Rita
I'm sorry.
thing, we did do a full analysis of Rita this past summer, and potentially bringing the tax department back in-house. And
Thank you.
I think the initial estimate was about $400,000 just and it was structured about almost exactly what you said. But between the people and the software and everything along those lines, it was gonna cost us about $400,000 a year. Right now, we're paying Rita about $140,000.
Did you get your
But with
money's
all
worth?
that being said, I have not one problem seeing if we can get payroll numbers and if the numbers add up properly.
What about letting Rita do it, but having a Harrison person audit Rita?
Well, Kim Downey is our tax commissioner now, so she's had a gigantic task since taking over the finance department. But this is something that we can definitely talk about.
You a CPA?
In
Good. We got a chance.
and taking a look at it. You know, you brought up some excellent points, just like just like, Mr. Neal, you know,
Right.
without having these types of conversations, we can't hear all the different perspectives, and that's what makes us do a better job up here, so,
I just think if you lower that tax, you won't get another levy passed, because everybody's gonna say that's enough.
So after tonight, though, you're gonna start paying city income tax, right?
Pardon? Does that mean you're going to hire me as a consultant, which I'm not going to do?
You can get rid of Rita, I would.
Yeah, I don't know. I'll help. Paul, I didn't say that. But I can't, Mr. Nyer and I have talked several ways, I would love to be a consultant. My health and my passion won't allow it, nor would my ADD.
That's what we want, is the passion.
I'll help somebody direct, but I will not do it. And I don't even grocery shop anymore, so. But whatever I can do to help. And to Fire Chief Herzog, what I've heard about your department and bringing other people in, January 27th, 2008, we had a fire. I thought it was just smoke. You're 2.5 blocks away, and we're there as fast as you could. May seem long to me. But the most important question was asked, is everybody out? And we weren't sure. Your gentleman went in, yes, they broke every glass, that's okay. But got down to the bedroom we thought a young boy was at and wasn't. And I thank you for that. And I also thank you, I had Robin Brucksterman in your vehicle calming me down. I will always say the highest praise, no matter what anybody else does, because they've never had to experience it, and I hope they don't. But you have always, both 911 runs and fire.
We need money to replace this.
I'm telling you. Not till they get theirs. But
What did you break?
thank you again for your department.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Jim.
Mary.
Thank you, Mary.
Who's next?
Anybody else have comments, questions, concerns? Any comments from council after what you've heard before we close the hearing?
Do you have any guesses on how much revenue Rita misses? I mean, they don't collect 100% of the tax. You think
So-
they get
well,
90%
the biggest
of it,
issue that we've
80%
had
of it?
in recent years is new residents moving in and not being aware that they are responsible to pay the income tax.
Right. Then they
That's
get caught a
probably the
couple years
biggest issue,
later,
and then after a couple years, Rita catches up and then mails them a notice, and then it comes to Kim and we have to negotiate, but it's settled at that point.
We have
That's
to
the biggest
negotiate, so
issue.
we help those folks out, we negotiate.
So typically, we collect the tax, but we work on the penalty and the interest.
Okay, so we collect the tax,
Yes.
no penalty, no interest, perhaps, or
That was one of the issues I had a problem with. Excuse me, I know she's the tax commissioner, but it's her
Yes.
job to assign, and it's your income tax bureau that does your appeals. It keeps the friendliness out. As a tax commissioner, I assign it only the ordinance, and only your appeals board can waive penalty or interest. But I understand Mayor Nyer said that was another thing you changed. It keeps friendship.
Yes,
It's not
okay.
right that the tax commissioner makes the final decision. That's what your bureau is for.
No.
Okay.
There we go.
Any other comments? Okay, we will show the public hearing closed at 8:23. Thank you, everyone.